The stewardess who kicked a black man off the plane for no reason, but bitterly regretted her act. Miami International Airport was bustling with activity on this sunny morning. The large windows let in golden light which reflected on the impeccably polished floors of the terminal. Travelers from all walks of life crowded into the bustling halls, dragging behind them state-of-the-art suitcases or simple battered luggage, evidence of countless journeys. The atmosphere was a mix of buzzing conversations, air announcements sounding at regular intervals, and the dull drone of planes taking off in the distance. Some passengers looked impatient, their eyes glued to the clock, fearing a last-minute delay. Others appeared stressed, frantically checking their travel documents, while families struggled to keep their children under control amid the tumult. Airport staff, dressed in their crisp uniforms, moved with well-practiced efficiency, answering questions, scanning boarding passes and guiding passengers to the gates. At the international flight terminal, a large plane was preparing to take off for New York. It belonged to one of the most prestigious airlines in the world, renowned for its impeccable service and luxurious amenities. The aircraft, a state-of-the-art model, sparkled in the morning sun, and its elegant fuselage proudly bore the company's golden emblem. On board, the atmosphere was very different from that of the noisy terminal. First-class passengers were already ensconced in a cocoon of luxury and tranquility. The interior of the cabin was a true showcase of refinement. Reclining leather armchairs, arranged in private spaces, promised a most comfortable journey. Each seat was equipped with an individual high-tech screen, offering a selection of recent films, music, and exclusive shows. The dim lighting added to the cozy atmosphere of the place, while the hostesses and stewards, dressed in carefully tailored uniforms, moved discreetly, placing glasses of champagne on the lacquered wooden shelves. A subtle scent of new leather and floral essences floated in the air, an olfactory signature specific to the flights of this elite company. Among the privileged passengers was William Carter. With a measured gesture, he put his ticket in the inside pocket of his elegant navy blue suit before taking a seat near the window. His demeanor exuded a quiet confidence, that of a man accustomed to such first-class travel. His face, framed by a finely trimmed beard, bore the discreet marks of experience and success. His keen gaze roamed the cabin, lingering for a moment on the crew before settling on the imposing wing of the aircraft, visible through the porthole. At his feet, a quality leather briefcase contained confidential documents related to a crucial meeting planned for his arrival in New York. An accomplished businessman, he never left anything to chance and planned to take advantage of the flight to finalize a few details. In one smooth motion, he opened his laptop and brought up complex graphs and columns of numbers. He was about to immerse himself in his work when a feminine voice, with a courteous but firm tone, spoke just behind him. "Sir, excuse me, but I think you have taken the wrong seat." William looked up and met the gaze of a blonde flight attendant with piercing eyes. His impeccable uniform showed off a slender figure, and his badge pinned to his jacket displayed his name, Claire Dubois. Behind his professional smile was a hint of barely concealed nervousness, a slight frown betraying his discomfort. He immediately noticed her slightly dry tone, her rigid posture, as if she was preparing for a confrontation that she considered inevitable. His gaze seemed to analyze every detail of his appearance. His tailored suit, his discreet luxury watch, his refined leather briefcase. Yet there was a hesitation in his attitude, as if, despite these outward signs of success, there was something wrong with him. William, remaining courteous and impassive, replied calmly,
"No, I'm in my place."
"Here is my post." With a measured gesture, he held out his phone, where his electronic ticket was clearly displayed. Claire glanced at it quickly, but instead of dwelling on the details, she immediately looked away, as if the mere thought of him being in her place disturbed her. His expression subtly shifted from feigned politeness to poorly contained annoyance. She crossed her arms and inhaled slightly before continuing, this time with barely veiled condescension. "Sir, first class is reserved for premium passengers."
"Maybe you should check your ticket again?" A thrill of attention ran through the cabin.
Several passengers, who until then had been sipping their champagne or absently consulting their screens, discreetly turned their heads towards the scene unfolding before their eyes. The murmurs rose, some exchanging intrigued glances, others observing William with a mixture of indifference and curiosity. William, always in control of himself, did not raise his voice. He had experienced this kind of situation before. He knew how to recognize this attitude, this unjustified suspicion, this look which said without saying it, "You shouldn't be here." He responded in a calm tone, articulating each word with a clarity that contrasted with the latent agitation around him. "I am a premium passenger. My ticket is in order. Is there a problem?"
Claire hesitated.
His gaze landed on a second-in-command stewardess, a young dark-haired woman who was standing a little behind. She, taken by surprise, shrugged her shoulders slightly, indicating that she saw nothing unusual. After all, William's ticket appeared to be valid, and no other passengers had come forward to claim that seat. But Claire wasn't convinced. An irrational doubt lingered in his mind. She had worked in this company for several years and was familiar with the type of customers who traveled first class. Businessmen in expensive suits, celebrities, politicians, wealthy heirs, a certain profile, a certain image which she instinctively associated with luxury and privilege. And this man didn't match what she was used to seeing. However, she knew that her reasoning was not objective. Nothing in William's appearance indicated that he was out of place. And yet, his mind unconsciously searched for a reason, a justification. Instead of checking the ticket as she should, she made an impulsive decision. In a falsely relaxed tone but imbued with an authority that brooked no challenge, she declared, "I will call a manager to clarify the situation." She didn't give him time to respond and abruptly spun on her heel, striding away down the cabin aisle, her tightly fitted uniform rippling under her rapid movements.
William let out a slight sigh.
He could have insisted, demanded that she do her job correctly and check her ticket immediately. But he knew that in these situations, attitude mattered more than words. He looked around. Some passengers avoided his gaze, pretending not to be interested in what was happening, while others, more open, observed the scene with a raised eyebrow, as if they sensed that the story was only just beginning. A few minutes later, a security guard appeared in the first-class aisle. He was massive, dressed in a dark uniform that reinforced his air of authority. His closed face and his piercing gaze indicated that he did not intend to waste time on useless palaver. He approached William's seat and said in a deep voice, "Sir, please follow us. There appears to be a confusion with your ticket." A tense silence fell over the cabin. All the passengers now had their eyes turned towards the scene. Some exchanged worried glances, others pretended not to be interested, but the atmosphere had changed. William, surprised, felt a wave of frustration rise within him. He knew exactly where this was going, and yet he didn't let anything show. His gaze hardened slightly as he replied, in a calm but firm voice,
"What confusion?"
"My ticket is valid, and I paid for this seat. You can check it." The security guard did not respond immediately. He cast a furtive glance at Claire, who was standing slightly behind but whose attitude betrayed a certain impatience. She was the one who had called him, and she expected the matter to be resolved quickly. In other words, to be resolved quickly. "Retire this first-class man," Claire insisted, this time with a feigned firmness which poorly masked a certain nervousness. "We need to check your ticket outside."
"Please accompany us, sir." A murmur ran through the cabin.
The tension was palpable. A woman sitting not far from William, a lawyer known for her positions in favor of civil rights, could not contain her indignation. She straightened up in her seat and said, in a scathing tone, "He just showed you his ticket. Why does he have to go out?" A few other passengers nodded in agreement. A man in a suit, visibly embarrassed, looked down at his newspaper, while another watched the scene with a frown, visibly uncomfortable. Claire, destabilized by this unexpected intervention, gave a tense smile, but her voice remained inflexible. "It's just a routine check, ma'am."
"Nothing unusual."
William knew exactly what was happening. This was not a simple check. It was not an error. It was prejudice disguised as standard procedure. He looked slowly from Claire to the security guard. He could have protested, demanded that we respect him, that we apply the rules correctly. But he also knew that in those moments, attitude mattered more than words. Excessive anger would have been immediately perceived as a threat. A refusal to comply would have fueled the invisible stereotypes that were already in the air. So, he chooses the elegance of silence. With a measured gesture, he sighed, picked up his leather briefcase and stood up. His movements were calm, calculated, devoid of haste. If he had to leave, he would do so with dignity. The security guard stood next to him, and under the gaze of the passengers, William left the first-class cabin. The heavy atmosphere accompanied them as they crossed the walkway leading to the terminal. When they arrived in a more remote area, an airline employee was waiting for them behind a counter. He took William's ticket, scanned it quickly, and looked at his screen. A few seconds were enough. The man raised his head, visibly disturbed. "Mr. Carter, your ticket is perfectly in order. You are in first class. There was no reason to remove you from the plane." William raised an eyebrow. "So why was I kicked out?" The silence that followed was heavy with meaning. The employee, embarrassed, opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. He knew the answer was obvious, but he didn't dare say it out loud. Then, the sound of hurried footsteps sounded in the corridor. A man in a grey suit appeared, out of breath, his tie slightly askew, a sign of obvious eagerness. His face instantly paled when he looked at William. It was about the airline operations director. In a slightly trembling voice, he exclaimed,
Mr. Carter.
"Please accept our sincere apologies for this huge error." The director's tone was a mixture of panic and shame. Because William Carter was not a simple passenger. He was one of the major investors in this airline.
A main shareholder.
A man whose decisions directly influenced the future of the fleet and the company's expansion plans. The matter immediately took another turn. The director glared at Claire, who had just arrived, visibly nervous. His former confidence and arrogance had evaporated, replaced by a palpable worry. Was it this hostess who insisted on kicking out Mr. Carter? He asked the employee, his voice sharp. The employee hesitated, trying to avoid Claire's gaze, but ended up nodding shyly. The director then turned to Claire, his lips pursed, his icy gaze piercing every inch of her tense face. "Do you realize the enormous mistake you have just made?"
Claire felt a cold sweat running down her back.
She glanced around, searching for non-existent support. I just thought he...
What?
The director cut in sharply, crossing his arms. That this man didn't have a place in first class? Claire opened her mouth, but no words came. How could she explain her reasoning without revealing the depth of her thoughts? William Carter, who had remained in the background until now, observed the scene with disturbing calm. He could have demanded his immediate dismissal, demanding compensation for the public humiliation he had suffered. But he was content to wait. The director had no intention of being lenient. He took a deep breath, trying to control the anger that was bubbling within him, then said sharply, "You are suspended immediately. And believe me, there will be consequences." The ground seemed to slip away from under Claire's feet. Suspended? His heart raced. She had worked hard to get this position, climbing the ranks with ambition. All this for what? For a prejudice that she hadn't even bothered to hide? "Sir, please," she tried in a trembling voice. "It was just a mistake." The director glared at her. "A mistake? Do you think that humiliating a passenger who paid for his ticket, an investor in our company, is a simple mistake? You not only discriminated, but you also put the image of our company at risk. Do you understand what this means?" Claire wanted to retort, but the truth was implacable. She had acted without thinking, believing that her status as hostess gave her absolute power over who had the right to sit where. Today, this feeling of superiority turned against her with a violence that she had not anticipated. William looked at her, without anger, but with a seriousness that weighed heavier than any accusation. Then, after a long silence, he simply declared, "I hope this experience has taught you not to judge people by their appearance." His words hit Claire harder than she expected. She lowered her head, unable to meet his gaze. A few minutes later, William was taken back onto the plane, this time greeted with every possible apology. The crew, now aware of their identity and influence, redoubled their efforts to try to erase the humiliation they had suffered. But William, unfazed, made no comment. He knew that an apology would not erase the initial injustice. As for Claire, her nightmare was only just beginning. What could have remained a minor incident turned into a scandal. The passengers had filmed the scene, and soon the images circulated on social networks. His name was associated with this affair, which made headlines in the press. A simple prejudice had cost her more than she had imagined.